Hi, I'm Dan Hegstead. Welcome to my vlog and podcast based on my book, Next Steps, Tools for Transforming from Coping to Thriving. The book is available on Amazon, and the links to all the Amazon options are on my website, as well as if you'd like to book me as a speaker, I'm available that day. danhegstead.com. That's what you want to do. Go to my website, danhegstead.com, links to Amazon, and then everything you know about booking me as a speaker. Hegstead, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, is Hegstad, danhegstead.com. And here's the book. For those of you that are watching on the vlog, you can see it, and it's available obviously as a paperback, and it is also an audiobook read by me, and it is a Kindle e-reader. And I'm a speaker, so I write for the audio first, and then it's made into the Kindle and then the paperback. So as I write, that is my default, is that this is an audiobook. It's a recording. And so I think that's the best version, but people like Kindles, and some people like a paper book in their hand. So it is all three. So yay. All right, so danhegstead.com, Hegstad, and I'm going to give you a link later in the podcast and vlog here for some resources. So that's on my website also. So you might want to make a note of that. So we're going to talk about stress reduction, stress management in this next series of episodes. And this episode is going to give you an overview of why that's important. And then we'll get into some strategies for stress management in the next few episodes. This is going to be one of the most important and challenging parts of moving to the top of the pyramid, of getting from coping to thriving. Stress management. It is going to be pretty challenging because it's going to require you to identify stress and decide if you want to do something about it, and if so, what. And if you do, that requires change. And some of it could be changing things that you've hung on to or done for all your life. But here you are. This is, if a few people make it to this point, and this is where we can lose a lot of people again. We can change with intention. You do not have to be forced. You do not have to hit bottom. You don't have to get the crap beat out of you before you finally decide to change. You can do this because you want to. And you just have to convince that lower brain, not convince, just tell it that the outcome is going to be better because of it. It will be challenging, but it's going to be better than where you are now once you come out the other side. And that takes logic in your higher brain. So here we go. We're going to start really getting into stress management. And what's funny about this is I do this presentation called Taming the Stress Monster. And I do it for, any businesses, many of them. And I just know that I present this good information, and I just don't think a lot of people really choose to manage stress. It's too much work, it's too much change, and they just don't do it. And life is so much better if you can manage and get rid of these stressors, or choose which ones you want to live with. That's okay. As long as it's your choice, it's fine. So the first thing I want you to do is identify what is stressful in your life. And you say, well, I can do that. Boom. Now I want you to sit down and make a list. I want you to get paper and a pen or pencil and write it down. Again, there is something absolutely magical about taking a pen and putting ink on paper. It comes from your head, it goes through your hand and arm, and you write. And I don't mean typing. I mean ink on paper. And very few people are going to do this. But if I told you there was a magic pill, you could take and you might do it, or if you dance under a 3/4 moon, spin around 3 times this way and 5 times counterclockwise, and then blah, blah. People would do that. But if I tell you that you may have to make a list, put it on paper with ink, a lot of people won't, because it just doesn't seem like that matters. I promise you it does. If you want to do this, if you want to move from coping to thriving, this is what you will do. So what's stress? Well, duh. Here, I made a list in 10 seconds. Job, coworkers, politics, kids, spouse, money, debt, weather, technology, housework, friends, traffic, handicaps, aging, and all the stuff that comes with that, overscheduling, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, you can do that. But here's the other thing. What I want you to do is make that list. Just do it. It's quick. And then do nothing with it. Set it aside. Come back later, hours, days later, and look at it, and you'll add to it. And maybe do that 1 or even 2 more times. You're going to think, once you get the process started, your brain's going to be working on this some more. And hours, days later, you're going to say, oh, yeah, that's stressful too, because you're going to be thinking about it. And then you're going to be going through your life, and you're going to find out things that maybe weren't as obvious as when you first started that list. So give it a little time. Come back to it. And right now, we are just making a list without judgment. Now, what you're going to do about it, that's different, and we'll deal with that later. Right now, we're not doing that. We're just making a list. Now, here's something that's interesting. They say you can't be too rich or too good looking, and I have found out you can. And I'm not kidding. One of my Tai Chi students was a therapist, and we were having this conversation, and she said she had a woman in therapy who was dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder because she was beautiful. And I'm not kidding. It sounds great. Yeah, you want to be beautiful. But women hated her because she was so good looking, and men were hitting on her all the time. It's just a constant barrage of nonsense, post-traumatic stress. That's the reality of it. And you say, well, that's a problem I'd like to deal with. Well, yeah, okay. But she was dealing with it. Good for her. But who would ever think that? Well, there you go. Can you have too much money? I buy a couple lottery tickets a week, and I find it interesting that I've done some research and some reading. What do you do once you've won the lottery? There's ways you handle it properly and ways you don't. I've run into a lot of stories where for some people, winning a lottery or getting a big inheritance is the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. It's such a massive change. They don't know how to handle it till it's too late. Not everybody, of course, but it's still a huge challenge. Think of this. If you say you win $200 million in the lottery and it's public, are you safe? Are you going to be kidnapped? Can your kids go to school? I mean, those are legitimate questions. I'm told you get bombarded, just inundated, flooded with requests for money. And legitimate people hurting and suffering, and they need some money to help them out. And what do? I mean, you could give away $200 million in a day. And you have to say no. You've met a new somebody somewhere, and are they your friend? Are they truly your friend because they like you, or do they like your money? I don't have to question that right now. That is a level of stress and complexity that most of us will never have to deal with. On the other hand, it is stress. So those are the kind of things that you need to think about. I mean, don't dismiss anything, is what I'm saying. So for now, I want you to make your list, ink on paper, what's stressful for you. Take a couple weeks or whatever you think is right. You can add to it later. It'll always be a work in progress. New things happen all the time. Here's the other part that makes this so challenging and why I'm making this a separate episode. In a very real way, the things you call stress are things you choose. And that sounds really harsh. A lot of it is stuff you don't. I mean, health issues happen and so forth. But, and you've heard this so many times, again, it sounds like nonsense, but it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. You've heard that 10 million times, so many times that your brain just dismisses it. Here is where it's true. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. So, I mean, so many times stress, it's like we're just walking down the street and a dump truck full of stress dumps on us from the sky, and it seems like that. And that's very real too, but how do you react to that? So that's where the relaxation comes in. That's where engaging the higher brain comes in. It's all these you choosing how you act and react and making some difficult decisions about reaction, what you want in your life and what you will no longer tolerate. Those are some huge decisions. But you're in the place to do that. We're at the top of the pyramid here. We're moving from coping to thriving. And that is where these big decisions present themselves. And now is when you choose when and how you want to deal with these things. It starts with your list. So go ahead, make your list. In the next few episodes, I'm going to start giving you tools for dealing with stress. And there's some big ones, and there's a lot of little ones too. And so we'll get into that in the next few episodes here. Okay, identifying stressors. Here's an important resource for you, and it is called the Schedule of Recent Experience. Yeah, it's definitely not a name put together by the marketing department. Dr. Thomas Holmes, I think from University of Washington, came up with this in the 80s, and so it's been around for a long time. And this isn't some self-help article in some checkout magazine. This is really scholarly, heavy stuff. Schedule of Recent Experience. So if you are listening to the podcast, you'll just have to remember that. Schedule of Recent Experience, Dr. Thomas Holmes. Consult the great Google. You'll find all kinds of references to it and some different versions of it. If you are watching, just go to my website, danhegstead.com. Go to the Resources tab, and on there is a link to a version of the Schedule of Recent Experience. What it is, it's a list of a whole bunch of things that can happen to us, similar to what I mentioned earlier. And, you just say, how many times has this happened to you in recent, I don't know if he gives you a timeline or just recent memory, and then you mark how many times it's happened to you, and he weights each one of these. Death of a spouse is the top one, and that's 100 points. And it goes down to, but, vacation is stressful. It's, 15 points or something like that. Christmas. Things like that. Goofy neighbors, that's on the list. So all those things, you look those up on the Schedule of Recent Experience, and a newer version of that makes the scale parametric. So you get to decide, okay, this happened, well, how bad is it? I've got a goofy neighbor. Is he a lunatic with a gun or just kind of a doofus? So you get to rate that. So it's not only how high is it on the scale, but how important is it? How difficult is that? So I have the regular version on my website, and that's just fine. It'll get you thinking. But you can look for the parametric scale. It's easy to find. It's out there. Schedule of Recent Experience, Dr. Thomas Holmes. It's some good stuff. So that will really help you make your list, and you will find it to be insightful. The fact that vacation is on the list, and Christmas is on the list. One of the things they all have in common, change. Even change you like. A promotion at work, getting an increase in your salary is stressful. Retirement is very stressful. I can tell you that. It's a good kind of stress, but it's so much change. It's kind of stressful. So what is life like now that you're retired? It's maybe not what you expected. So that's a kind of a stress. It's a good stress to have. So go to my website, danhegstead.com. Yes, you should buy the book. Yes, you should book me as a speaker. And yes, you should go to my website and find the schedule of recent experience. Get into this stress. Start looking at it. What makes you stressed? And then we're going to get into some strategies on how to deal with it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'm Dan Hegstead. This is Next Steps, Tools for Transforming from Coping to Thriving.